part 3 of the FamiTracker tutorial series, I show you how I make reverb and delay effects inside FamiTracker. With these techniques, you can give your chiptunes a sense of depth and dimension while still maintaining the 8-bit ethos. Welcome back to the FamiTracker tutorial series. In this video, we're going to be talking about how we can simulate effects like reverb and delay inside of FamiTracker. If you watched the last episode, which dealt with the noise channel, you should have an understanding of the tempo effect and also the formula that I showed you of how to deal with musical time when programming your instruments. But let's just quickly review those two things, starting with the tempo effect. So to review, if you want a more in-depth explanation about this, go back and watch the last video. But for now, this tempo effect in song settings, do not use that. Instead, we're going to adjust the tempo of our project using an effect, and that effect is the F effect. And something I didn't mention in the last video, but if you put, all you need to do is put the F effect in one channel, and it'll affect everything in the project, which is important. So just a quick review. F is the tempo effect. The middle number, or the first number, if you want to think of it that way, adjusts the tempo up or down by 16 beats per minute, because remember, we're dealing with hexadecimal as the base, meaning that we're using a base of 16 instead of a base of 10, which may be more familiar. The number to the right here adjusts the tempo up or down by 1 BPM. The slowest tempo that you can achieve in FamiTracker is F20, and if you look down here in the right-hand corner, lower right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see that once I press play, the tempo has changed from 150 to 32 beats per minute. So then now, if I add and I go up to F30, this is going to be 48 beats per minute. And I'm laughing because I got that addition wrong in the last video, but that's fine. And then if I go up to F40, this is going to be 64 beats per minute. There that is. Okay, and then now if I add F41, is going to bring me up to 65 beats per minute. Now, if I want to go back down, say I want to go to 63 beats per minute, what I would need to do is go back down a level in the bass, which is F30, and then now I have to go to, it would be F3F. And then there's 63 beats per minute. Now, so that's a crash course of how the tempo effect works, and we can go all the way up to 255 beats per minute. Anything slower than F20, what that does is it deals with ticks, which, again, if you want to know more about ticks, go back and watch the noise channel video, but basically that has to do with the computational clock in FamiTracker, and there are 6 ticks per row. So basically, if you had like F10, each row is going to be processed slower than normal. This is useful when you're programming things like sound effects and stuff like that, but we're not going to be dealing with that in this video. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to review the 60K millisecond formula that I showed you in the last video. So to do that, we're going to set the tempo at F3C, which is 60 beats per minute. So let's talk about this formula. The 60K millisecond formula has to do with understanding how many milliseconds there are in one beat of musical time. So if you think about a clock, there are 60 seconds in a minute. So if we program a tempo of 60 beats per minute, that means that one beat is equal to 1 second of chronological time. Milliseconds, milli being Latin for 1,000, what that does is it splits 1 second of chronological time into 1,000 slices. So basically what we want to do with the 60K millisecond formula is understand how many milliseconds there are in one beat of musical time. So to do this, what I use is a calculator. So I have one by my desk here, And you could use the one on your computer too, but I like this one for some reason. So, so what you would do is 60,000. You start with 60,000. And the reason you start with 60,000 is because that's how many milliseconds there are in 1 second. So what you do is you divide 60,000 by whatever your tempo is. So that in this case would be 60. We get 1,000. And then so that means that 1,000 milliseconds is equal to 1 beat of musical time at 60 beats per minute. And then you can use this for any other tempo that you like. If you want to go deeper with that, go back and watch the noise video. So let's talk about delay. What is delay? Delay is a musical effect that's similar to what we would understand as being like an echo. So when you have a musical note played like that, what a delay would do would be to repeat that note again at a set interval of time. So whether it's set to musical beats or to actual chronological time using milliseconds, what it's going to do is play that note again. With FamiTracker, there are several ways that we can achieve delay. So first thing to note, I lied to you before, not on purpose, but instead of using 60 beats per minute, we're going to use 100 beats per minute just because 60 beats per minute is a little bit too slow. So the tempo that we're going to work with is F64, and then that's going to be 100 beats per minute. So here is a short D minor arpeggio. So we're going to look at some ways that we can add delay to this. So the first way that you might want to add delay would be to use another channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy paste and copy paste it to pulse 2. So now let's hear this for a second. Now, you might notice that it sounds bad and worse than it did. That's because of something called phase cancellation. So basically, as one synth channel is playing its waveform and the other one is playing the same one, the waves are kind of clashing with one another and canceling each other out. So it's not moving as much air from the speakers. So we want to avoid that, and there's ways to avoid that. But now, so one thing I can do is instead of copy pasting to the same row, I can copy paste to the row below. And then now I have this, which sounds like it's just playing 16th notes because it is, because this is basically a 16th note delay. If I want to make it an 8th note delay, I could copy paste it one row below, but since I already have it here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the insert key, and that's going to drop everything from the row that I'm on down one row. So if we play that. But so one other problem with this is that this delayed channel is too loud. So we want to have it play lower, softer. Let's go back to the 16th note delay because I think we'll hear it better. So I'm going to hit backspace, and that's going to move everything back up one row. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the volume row or the volume column to adjust the volume. So F, again, we're talking about hexadecimals. So F is the loudest, 0 is the quietest. So we want to be somewhere, sometimes, I don't know, like 8 might be a good place to be. So now I kind of have like a 16th note delay, 16th note delay happening. And that kind of reminds me of like lots of games, but Ninja Gaiden, it kind of reminds me of like a Ninja Gaiden kind of thing. But now, there's other problems with this. Well, actually, before I get to the other problems, so what if we want this to be almost like a, where the delay fades out over time? Well, what we can do is I could go and I could say, all right, so then now 8, 7, 6, 5, I could input all of that data. But instead of doing that, there's an easier way to do it, which would be, let's start from 9, just because. And then, so my loudest delay note is going to be 9. My quietest, let's just say 2. What I can do is I can highlight the 9, click and drag all the way down, keep it in the volume row, and then highlight the 2. I can right click, and then I can use interpolate. And then what that's going to do, FamiTracker is just going to basically gradually fade the delay down the volume down for me. So we get this. So this can be really useful if you want your effect to kind of fade out over time. So let's just, for now, we'll just stick with the 8 value. And anytime you change the volume of a channel, it's going to stay that same volume until you tell it to do something else. So this channel will always play until I tell it otherwise at the volume level of 8. So, but there's another problem with this kind of delay, which is it's a very inefficient use of space, especially if you're dealing with the 2A03 chip, meaning that you're not using one of the expansion chips to get more channels. So we're really only using 4 channels. And so if I'm using 2 for a delay, that means I really only have 2 voices going on, not including the noise channel. So 2-channel delay is very inefficient. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at actually how can we create the delay in the instrument design itself. So let's see how we can program the delay inside the instrument design. I've erased the delay that I had in Pulse 2, so now we're just back to a simple D minor arpeggio. What we need to do is go back to the instrument design, and we're going to use the 60K millisecond formula. So let's remember what we're doing is 60,000 divided by our tempo, which is in this case 100. We get 600. This is how many milliseconds there are in one beat of musical time. Since this pattern, this arpeggio, is occurring in eighth notes, it wouldn't make sense for us to make an eighth note delay in this way. So we're going to do a 16th note delay. So what we would do is say 600 divided by 4, because we're dividing each beat of musical time into 4 partials. So that's going to be 150 milliseconds. So let's scale this back to 150. And then just for now, we'll copy paste, and we have this. So let's hear what that sounds like. So now we have a delay happening in one channel, but it's happening at the same volume. So it's kind of just doubling the note, which means we could just program it in 16th notes. So an efficient way to do that would be to trim the delay back. And then what I'm going to make sure I do here is I'm going to make sure that the last column is 0, so that way the note cuts off. And then I'm also going to do this. I'm going to bring this one back and then do the same thing here. Get rid of this loop. Do the same thing here. Sorry. Okay. Now let's hear. So now we have a delay happening in one channel. So now that expands the possibilities of what we can do with the 2A03 chip. We go from just having a kind of sterile sonic environment to now we can create an actual sense of space with just 3 channels, which is pretty cool. So let's talk about reverb and what it is and how it's different but also similar to delay. So reverb occurs within natural space. When you have a sound or an impulse that's created by a sound source, that sound travels across the space through the air and then is either absorbed by a surface or reflects off of a surface. And then the reverb is created by those reflections. So as the original impulse is bouncing around the room, it's decreasing in amplitude and until it is silent. And that's what creates reverb. How it differs from delay is you can have naturally occurring delays, but kind of the distinction is, to me anyway, that delays are the original impulse repeated. It's the actual impulse and it's just being repeated at lower volumes, whereas reverb is supposed to be interaction with the environment. It can create echoes. You know, the natural environment can create echoes, which is similar to delay, but that's kind of like the difference, to me anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how we can create some reverb effects inside of FamiTracker. So this is the original impulse that we have, which is kind of good because let's imagine, like, the way that you want to kind of deal with reverb is to kind of imagine the space that you want. So you'll see in music production, you'll see things like halls or rooms or plate reverbs or spring reverb. There's all these different kinds of reverb. So I think the best place to start is to imagine, like, put your composition in a space. Where would you want to hear, what kind of room or space would you want to hear this music being played if it were being played by live instruments? That's a kind of a good exercise. So what we'll do is we'll think about a guitar, because a guitar is a good example, because usually if you're strumming a guitar or picking notes, you're going to have a pick, you're going to hit the string, so there's going to be a short, sharp transient, and then that note is going to decay pretty steeply, but there is some sustain to it. So this is pretty good, but we'll just do half a beat, and we'll do something like this, just to give it a little bit more life. And really, a guitar would probably decay longer than that. But what we want is to think about the difference between short tail reverb and long tail reverb. Really, all this means is, like, short tail reverb would just be occurring in a smaller space. And what it does is there are some reflections that sustain the sound, but they decay to silence relatively quickly. So for our purposes, it depends on the tempo, it depends on, all these kinds of different factors, but generally thinking about short tail reverb as occurring between half a beat and 1.5 beats. So in this case, if we think about one beat as being 600 milliseconds, we can say maybe, all right, 750 for our longest short tail reverb. And so we have our impulse, our transient, and then we would just kind of fade this down till something like this. So then now we'd have... And going back to the guitar example, this is really, to me, sounds more like the natural decay of a guitar, but that's fine. For now, it's okay. So let's just see if we program in a note, and you see it kind of doesn't go doesn't become silent until about the middle of the next beat. So if I play another one, and maybe another one might be here. So we're starting to get into reverb territory there. But what if we want a long tail reverb? Generally, like 2 beats should have you covered in most tempos. So that would be up to like 1200 beats per minute. Milliseconds. So then that might be something like this. Similar thing, we just draw in the curve, and then there it is. And then now let's just see. And in FamiTracker, the thing is, it can be hard to distinguish between what's just a sustained note versus what is reverb versus what is delay versus all of these different things. I mean, ultimately, like, we're talking about like 40-year-old audio synthesis technology, so it's really not worth kind of getting too much into the weeds. We're just trying to create music that sounds interesting, basically. Similar to how we used multiple channels to create delay effect, we can do the same thing with reverb. So I've programmed in this new instrument here. This is a vibraphone kind of struck without the damper pedal on. So we have just kind of this short sound. So and a kind of a long legato melody. So one way we can do that is I've programmed in a reverb, right? But if I want to do multi-channel reverb, what I can do is this. I can copy paste, and we're going to paste this into channel 2, pulse 2. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to highlight all of them, and I'm on instrument 2, which is my vibraphone reverb, so I'm going to do Alt-S, and that's going to replace the instrument. Let's hear what this sounds like. So it's kind of like this weird squishy phase cancellation going on in there. There's a couple of ways that you can deal with this. So one would be to use the G effect. The G effect, what this does is it is similar to delay in the sense that if we remember the discussion about ticks in the, how the processor is processing the data of in the rows. If I use the G effect, I can go 1 to 6, and what that's going to do is it's going to delay that whatever sound is in that channel by 1 tick every number I go up. So if we hear this, you can kind of hear, and then more. So this can be also a way of achieving delay. But I use it mostly when I need a little bit more space between notes, or I'm getting phase cancellation, and you kind of just have to feel it out. There's really no like formula. It's just a matter of just kind of going off of instinct. But let's just use G4. And what I'll do is I'll copy paste that on all of these notes just so that we can hear what this sounds like. So really, actually, technically, it's almost like pre-delay on like a reverb plugin, which means that you're hearing the sound and then the space is such that it's taking some time before those reflections start bouncing off the wall. So think of it almost more like pre-decay. But there's a way that you can make this even more realistic, or as realistic as you can, which would be to eliminate the initial transient. So I might do something like this. I might just have a pretty smooth attack, and that would sound like this. And let's see if we get it even more. But I want it to like something like this maybe. Let's see what this sounds like. And this is just experimentation. We're getting closer to more organic sounds this way, more organic sound design, at least as far as FamiTracker is capable of. But again, another problem with this is the inefficiency of space, of channel usage. So I'll just quickly talk about expansion channels. So if we want to expand the channel count in FamiTracker, we can come to Module and then Module Properties, or Control P. And then I can do, it gives me this expansion sound. The most common one is going to be a VR6. What the VR6 chip was the chip that was in the FamiTracker system console in Japan versus what was in the NES. And so you get an extra 3 channels with that. And so I will use this quite a lot, specifically for creating reverb and delay in certain situations. In order to use the VR6 chip, you have to create a different instrument, because if you see here, it says 2A03. The VR6 chip, like if I just copy paste all of this over to here, and obviously this is, we need to Alt S this, you'll see that this is, let's just mute that. You'll see that the instrument row is red because these instruments are not compatible with VR6. So what I need to do is come to this icon, say new VR6 instrument, and then what I can do is I can just use, so I can't. I have to now program in. I thought I could use a different sequence, the same sequence, but I cannot do that. So what I'll do is I'll copy these values from here, and I'll come in here, and I'll put it here. And then also with the pulse width, you actually have more capabilities with the pulse width. You have more, you can get more granular and more nuanced with the sound with the VR6 chip, which is why it's a great option to use. But now we'll just kind of keep it as similar as we can. And so Control A, Alt S. So I'm starting to be able to now, I can use these extra channels to create delay and reverb if I want. But let's keep it pure and stick with the 2A03 and see how we can combine reverb and delay together in one channel. If we want to combine reverb and delay together in one channel, we would do that like this. So here's a new example back at 100 beats per minute for easy math. Just kind of simple melody. So what I'm going to do is take a look here. And so we have, this is just a short transient, 150 milliseconds. So let's copy paste that 4 times in the delay and verb channel. So that would be something like this. And then now we're going to copy paste this full channel over to here. Sorry. And then we are going to change the instrument and let's mute this channel just so we can hear pulse 2. So we just have repeated notes going on here. So we know with the delay, we kind of want to have these fading out. But with the reverb, we want to smooth over the transients. So what I will do is I'll just kind of draw in loosely these waves, smoother waves that the peaks correspond with the transient from the delay, but the notes connect so that you have a sense of sustain from the reverb. So let's hear what that sounds like. At this tempo, it sounds a lot like vibrato, and it's similar to that. And there are times where maybe you can achieve a similar effect with the vibrato effect, but you can really kind of have fun with just drawing in these envelopes and seeing what kind of effects you can get. And another advantage here is that you can draw in more precise rhythmic subdivisions. You could use 5s, you could use 3s, you could do all this kind of stuff. So it's a little bit more maybe accessible. And then if we want to spread this across 2 channels, we can do the same thing that we did before, which was, so then let's just use the G effect and we'll say G04. And then what I like to do with this is when I want an effect to carry through a piece like this, instead of typing it in all the time, I'll just like copy paste large sections of it, and then that should be fine for now. And then we'll unmute this channel, and then let's also make this a little bit quieter. So probably a better choice might be a different number here. Let's see. That one's not good. Let's try another one. That's maybe even worse. But you get the idea. You get the concept. And what you're doing is you're kind of just really, ultimately what all this is exploring the sound design capabilities. So what I recommend a lot of times with FamiTracker is really try and get as much out of the 2A03 chip as you can, because then when you incorporate expansion chips, you're going to be able to make stuff that's really a lot more sophisticated because you've worked within this limitation. Before we end, I'll just share a quick musical example. So this is the A minor 2-part invention by J.S. Bach. And this will just give you kind of an idea of how I might have a session set up where I'm trying to create a sense of space and an organic quality within the music. So the 2-part inventions are set up such that you have 2 melodic voices happening at the same time, and they're written in counterpoint, so they're kind of like harmonizing one another. Here's the first voice. And if you look at the instrument design, I have this happening with this kind of slow attack and then this tail at the end, which could either be articulation of an instrument or it could be delay. And it's kind of more like articulation of an instrument, I think. But here is the reverb. It's basically the same shape, but it's a slightly different time. The envelope is, for the instrument is 650 milliseconds. This is 616. Was that intentional? I don't know, but it could be, because in a real space, you're going to have these imperfections, so it kind of helps with the organic quality of the music. With voice 2, we have, that sounds like this. And this is in a lower register than the first voice. So I have thinking more almost maybe like a pizzicato bass or something like that, or just a deeper voice. So this is a different shape, and it's just kind of a longer sustain, right? So now the reverb for voice 2, this is where it's different. This is kind of like it has this reverb and delay quality. So if I just isolate, let's just isolate the reverb channels, or at least the reverb channel for this one, because we heard the other one already. Yeah. So it has that kind of breathy quality to it. If I add in the instrument, we now have some dimension to the music. So what I'll do is I'll just play through, and I'll play the 2 voices, and then I'll add in the reverbs. Well, 2 voices dry, and then add in the reverb. So here it is from the top with just 2 voices. Here's reverb 1. Kind of hear it in there. And here's reverb 2. Taking them both out. Putting them both back in. So it's really all up to how you want to manage your project and how you choose to utilize the channels you have available to you. But there's another channel that we haven't discussed yet, and that is the DPCM channel. The DPCM channel can be one of the most powerful channels for creating compelling chiptune music, and I'm going to show you how I like to use it in this video right here, which I hope you will join me for. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.